Hello students. Illness and disease are two words we all are familiar with. If we are not in a comfortable physical or mental state to carry out our daily tasks, we say, I am sick. In this chapter, let's take a crack at the real meaning of disease and what are the reasons behind the disease. Illness is a period of sickness or disease to the mind or to the body. Nobody wants to be ill. To understand a disease, we should first have a clear picture of health. Our body is made up of cells. The fundamental and functional unit of the body is a cell. A cell has a variety of chemical substances like carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, etc. Billions and billions of chemical reactions are happening in these cells and in our body. According to recent studies, millions of cells are produced in our body in each second. These cells group together to form tissues, tissues group together to form organs. Our heart is an organ. Heart pumps blood all the time. Our kidneys remove the waste materials from our body. The persons with kidney problems are at an increased risk of the improper functioning of the brain due to the accumulation of waste materials in our body. If heart fails to function properly, the blood will not reach all the organs and that will be the end of our life. From this we can conclude that all the activities that happening in our body are interconnected. For these activities we need energy and we get the energy from the food we eat. Anything that prevents the proper functioning of the cells and tissues lead to the lack of activity of our body. If everything functions properly, we can say it is state of health, and if the activities are not happening in the way it should happen, we can call the state as disease. We use the word health in two ways. If somebody says my health is not good, that means that the person has some kind of illness. And if somebody says, wow, you have a healthy attitude, that means you have a positive attitude towards life. Health is a state of being well enough to function physically, mentally, and socially. I already mentioned that health is a state of being well enough to function physically, mentally, and socially. We cannot achieve good health entirely of our own. Our health and the health of all the other organisms depend on the surroundings. For example, a cyclone or a flood has many bad effects on our health. A cyclone might lead to an increase in bacterial pollution of drinking water. There will be mixing of fecal matter in water, which ultimately leads to many waterborne diseases like diarrhea, cholera, and typhoid. Humans are social animals. Therefore, social environment will definitely have an effect on our health. We live in villages, towns, and cities. Imagine there is an improper garbage disposal system in our society. This will adversely affect your health. You will be prone to all kinds of bacterial and viral diseases. Same is the case with improper drainage system. As a result, dirty water gets clogged on the streets and open places. Moreover, we need to be happy in order to be healthy. Our behaviorism with fellow humans will make us unhappy and that will affect our health. Social equality and harmony is necessary for individual health. Till now, I explained the meaning of being healthy. We are in good health when our body functions properly. When we live in a good social environment, we will be in good health and our behavior towards others will be friendly, thereby keeping our mind happy. Now let's understand the term disease. Disease means disturbed ease. It is a state of discomfort. Normally, a disease is followed with symptoms. Fever is a symptom for many diseases, like that cough is a symptom of infection or allergy. Now let's understand what are the difference between health and disease free. We cannot say that a person is healthy simply because of that he is not suffering from a disease or he doesn't have any discomfort in his body. The feeling of good health changes from person to person. A person is healthy when he or she is physically, mentally, and emotionally fit. But a person can be said to be disease free when he or she has no discomfort in the body. For example, if a person is unwilling to interact with others in the society, he cannot be called as a healthy person, but it doesn't mean that he has an ailment in his body. The problem is with his attitude. The health of a person depends upon his surroundings and society, but the state of disease free completely depends upon a person's attitude. As another example to disease free, we can say that a person cannot sing harmoniously as before as he is mentally stressed out or depressed, but there is no ailment in his body. This singer is disease free but not healthy. From all the above examples, we can say that a healthy person is disease free, but disease free person is not always healthy. It depends upon the individual's attitude. Let's understand more about disease. We are aware that our body is made up of cells. The cells which perform different functions form a tissue. In chapter 6, we learned in detail about the tissues. The tissues group together to form organs, organs group together to form organ systems. That means organ system is a group of organs. For example, digestive system includes stomach, small intestine, large intestine. Musculoskeletal system includes skeleton and muscles. If we don't have any disease, all these systems will work in proper manner. But how we will know that the body system is not working properly? Our body indicates this with some symptoms. Sometimes we suffer from cough, which is a symptom. Sometimes we suffer from loose motion, headache and all that. All these are symptoms. But we cannot identify the proper cause with only one symptom. For example, headache is a symptom of stress, meningitis, and a dozen of other diseases. Imagine a scenario in which you have a persisting headache. You will consult a doctor and the doctor will examine you and check for any other symptoms. All the symptoms will give a little more definite indication of the presence of a particular disease. Most of the times, physicians will recommend for laboratory tests to get more clarity about the disease. Some diseases last only for a couple of days, but some others will last lifelong. The disease which lasts for a short period of time is called acute disease. A common cold will last for a few days and we recover after that. Examples of acute diseases are asthma, a fracture of bone, etc. But some diseases last for lifelong. They are called chronic diseases. Some of you might be familiar with elephantiasis, which is very common in some part of India. Other examples are diabetics, arthritis, etc. The effects that an acute or chronic disease impart in your body is different. Acute disease will not cause much damage to our body system, but chronic diseases will cause damage as it will last for long. For example, if we have common cold, we will have symptoms like fever, headache, cough, sneezing, running nose, etc. But that will not cause damage in our body. Within days, we will completely recover from it. We might miss school for a couple of days, that's it. But think of chronic diseases like cancer. It will damage our body. Most of the chronic diseases generally don't get cured completely. Some persons might have to deal with stress due to chronic illness. As a result, they will have mental discomfort. Chronic diseases therefore have a very drastic long-term effect on person's health as compared to acute diseases. Now you are well aware with the term disease. Also you learned that diseases impart symptoms like loose motion. Imagine a child is suffering from loose motion. The loose motion is as a result of infection, but we are still not aware of the cause of loose motion. It might be because of virus, bacteria, or parasite. Let's check the possibilities of infection. One of the possibility of infection is that of poor health. There are chances that the child might have taken contaminated water and that might have resulted in getting infection. Some of his friends might have taken contaminated water along with him, but this particular child has only suffered. This is because he is not healthy and the others are healthy. Unhealthy persons is more likely to have infection when exposed to these kinds of risks, but healthier persons won't have this problem. We just conclude that the child is not healthy. This might be due to lack of good nourishment. Maybe he is deficient in vitamins and minerals which made him unhealthy. But then arises the question why he is not well nourished. It might be that his parents are not financially fit to nourish the child with proper food. As a third cause for diseases, we can say that the infection might be due to lack of public services. If the society is supplied with clean drinking water, the chances of getting infections from water is low. Now we saw that the disease has an immediate cause and contributory causes. In our example of the child, immediate cause was that the child drank contaminated water and the contributory causes are poverty and lack of public services. When we look into the causes of diseases, we can conclude that there are mainly two causes for diseases. One is infectious cause and the other one is non-infectious cause. Infectious cause is by the infectious agents like bacteria, virus, etc. Or in other way we can say infectious cause is the microorganisms. When the microorganisms are the immediate cause of disease, that type of disease is known as infectious disease. Earlier we saw how a cyclone leads to the spread of diseases due to microorganisms. Similarly, microbes can spread diseases in the community due to various reasons. But there are some diseases which are caused due to non-infectious causes. These diseases are not due to the attack of microorganisms. They may be due to some internal causes. For example, some cancers are caused by genetic abnormalities. Nowadays, all are aware that exercise is essential for good health. Lack of exercise leads to obesity, heart problems, and a dozen of other diseases. But these diseases are not caused by microorganisms and hence they are non-infectious. Let's learn more about the infectious and non-infectious diseases. We learned that the infectious diseases are caused by microorganisms. In 8th grade, you learned about the microorganisms and their categories. Bacteria, virus, protozoa and fungi come under microorganisms, and other than microorganisms, some worms cause infectious diseases as well. Bacteria causes cholera, tuberculosis and plague. Virus causes COVID-19, chickenpox and measles. Protozoa causes malaria, leishmaniasis and Chagas disease. Leishmaniasis spread by the bite of infected sandflies. It causes skin sores and spleen enlargement. Chagas disease causes damage to heart and central nervous system. Fungi causes aspergillosis and candida. Worms causes amoebiasis. It is important to categorize these infectious agents into these different categories as the characteristic of one is different from other group. The characteristic of bacteria is different from that of virus. Virus cannot live outside the cell of the host. They invade the cells of animals or humans and reproduce inside the cell. That means make their own copies inside the cells. Eventually, the cell will burst open. Here you can see a virus is invading into the cell. The virus has a protein coat around it that is called the capsid. Once inside the cell, the capsid gets disintegrated and the viral DNA comes out. This viral DNA gets into the nucleus and makes its own copies. As a result, a number of viral copies come out of the cell and finally the cell dies. But bacteria rarely does this. They attack the cells from outside. In the picture, you can see the bacteria which causes tuberculosis. Tuberculosis affects lungs. The attacking mode is different in different microorganisms. That is why it is important to know the category of infectious agent for proper treatment. For example, antibiotics are effective against bacteria. Many antibiotics work against many species of bacteria rather than simply working against one. But antibiotics are not at all effective against viruses. Many bacteria make a cell wall around them. Here you can see this is a tuberculosis bacteria and this is the cell wall around them. This cell wall gives them protection. There are some biochemical pathways happening inside the bacteria for the production of this cell wall. When we use antibiotic like penicillin against this bacterium, penicillin will block the biochemical pathway in the bacteria that helps them to make a cell wall. As a result, the bacteria are unable to produce cell wall and they get destroyed. Human cells have no cell wall around it, hence penicillin will not have any effect on our cells and our cells are safe. Viruses don't make cell wall around them. That is why antibiotics cannot destroy them. Instead of cell wall, we just saw the viruses produce a protein coat around them. If you are suffering from a common cold, taking antibiotic will not reduce the severity of the disease as common cold is caused by a virus. But if you have a bacterial infection along with the viral infection, taking antibiotic will help. Even then, the antibiotic will work against the bacterial part only, not the viral part. As we now know that the infectious diseases are caused by microorganisms, let's learn how it spread from one person to another. Infectious diseases that spread from one person to another by air, water or physical contact is called communicable diseases. Airborne diseases are common cold, pneumonia, tuberculosis, etc. In airborne diseases, the infectious organism spreads through air. When an infected person sneezes or cough, the droplets from his nose and mouth containing infectious organism spreads into the air. When we breathe in that air, the microorganism will enter our body through the nose and we get infected. You might have noticed that if your friend is suffering from common cold, by sitting near to him, you might get the cold as common cold is airborne. The more crowded our living conditions are, the more likely airborne diseases will spread. Infectious diseases spread through water as well. Examples of waterborne diseases are typhoid, cholera, hepatitis A. The excreta of the person suffering from hepatitis A or cholera contain the infectious organism. By any chance, if these excreta mix with the drinking water gets contaminated with these infectious organisms. When a healthy person drinks this contaminated water, he might get these diseases. Another way of spreading infectious diseases is by sexual contact. AIDS and syphilis are sexually transmitted diseases. They transmit from one partner to other. But these diseases will not spread by casual physical contacts like handshakes or hugs. Other than sexual contact, AIDS get transmitted from one person to another through blood transfer. An infant gets AIDS from mother through breastfeeding. Another way of transmitting disease is by carriers or vectors. Vector can be an animal or insect which carry the infectious causing organism and transmit the disease. For example, mosquito is a vector of dengue fever. Mosquito transmit the disease from one person to another. In many species of mosquitoes, the females need highly nutritious food in the form of blood in order to be able to lay mature eggs. Now we know that the infectious organism enter our body through different modes like through air, water and sexual contact. Once they enter our body, different organisms attack different areas, tissues or organs in our body. Let's see what will happen in the case of airborne diseases. Example of airborne disease is tuberculosis, which is caused by bacteria. They enter our body via nose and they possibly go into our lungs. The infectious organism that enter through our nose likely to go to the lungs. This is the bacteria that causes tuberculosis. As it affects lungs, the symptoms include cough and breathlessness. In case of waterborne diseases like typhoid, the bacteria enter our body via mouth and reach the stomach. They can stay in the lining of gut. They will stay here, the lining of the gut. Sometimes the organism enters our body via mouth and targets our liver, this area. This is the liver. And this case, they cause jaundice or hepatitis A. In case of jaundice, the skin, whites of eyes and mucous membrane turns yellow. This yellow color is caused by high levels of bilirubin. Bilirubin is a yellow-orange pigment secreted by the liver. Malaria is caused by protozoans which enter our body through mosquito bite. It will go into the liver through blood and multiplies in liver. Again they enter the bloodstream and attack the red blood cells and destroy them. Another disease is called Japanese encephalitis or brain fever is also caused by mosquito bite. Through the bite of a mosquito, the virus enters our body. As it affects the brain, there will be headache, fever, vomiting, etc. But this scenario is not applicable in some cases. For example, AIDS is caused by human immunodeficiency virus, that is HIV. This virus enters our body through sexual contact, but it doesn't mean that it affects only the sexual organs. It spreads to the lymph nodes all over the body. You can see the lymphatic system here. This green area, this is the lymphatic system, and you can see the lymph nodes. This is one lymph node. These lymph nodes filter out the damaged and cancer cells. Lymph nodes contain special cells that attack and destroy bacteria. But HIV attacks these lymph nodes and hence it affects our immune system and damages its functions. Once our immune system is down, our body is susceptible to all kinds of diseases as our body no longer has the ability to fight against the diseases. Hence, a common cold can become pneumonia. A minor stomach infection leads to major diarrhea with blood loss. A person suffering from AIDS does not die due to the HIV virus only. Instead, all these other infections together kill the person. We saw that the infections affects the lungs and produce cough and breathlessness. Infections affects liver, cause skin color change due to increased bilirubin secretions. Infections affect brain, produce headache and fever. Despite all these tissue-specific symptoms, there will be common symptoms. These symptoms are due to the action of our immune system against the invading infectious organisms. Whenever an infectious microbe enters our body, our immune system becomes activated. Immune system consists of many cells which have the capacity to attack the microbes that enter our body. These cells are neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, monocytes, T cells, B cells, natural killer cells and macrophages. All these are our immune cells. Immune system will bring all these cells to the affected tissue to fight the microbes. This recruitment of the cells by the immune system against the disease causing microbe is called inflammation. As a part of this process, there will be swelling, pain, fever, etc. These symptoms actually shows that our immune system is acting against the invading microorganisms. The severity of the disease depends on the number of microbes that enter our body. If the number of microbes is less, the manifestations due to the disease might be minor. But if the number of microbes is large, then the disease can be severe. We learned that when a microorganism gets into our body, we might fall sick. Our immune system will try to kill the invading organisms by recruiting many cells to the affected organ or tissues. This may lead to many symptoms such as fever, pain, inflammation, etc. Due to these symptoms, we might feel uncomfortable. There are two ways to treat an infectious disease. One is to reduce the effects of the disease. We can take medicines to reduce fever, pain or loose motions. The other one is to kill the invading microorganism. Whenever you are sick, your parents will advise you to take some bed rest. This will help to conserve our energy and enable us to use this energy for healing. But if we take medicines to only bring down the symptoms, it will not help to cure the diseases. For example, if we take medicines to bring down fever, it will reduce only the fever. The infectious microbe will be still there in the body and the disease will not get cured. So we need to take the medicines that kill the microbes. You are aware that there are many categories of microbes like bacteria, virus, protozoa and fungi. Each of these groups have biochemical reactions in their body which are different from one another. Biochemical reactions of bacteria is different from the biochemical reactions of virus. These reactions help them to attack the host cell and equip them to escape from our immune system. Hence, we have to use different medicines for each group to interfere in their biochemical reactions and thereby killing them. For example, the biochemical reactions that happen in our body is entirely different from that of a bacterium. We need to find a drug that blocks the biochemical pathway without affecting our own. That is what exactly the antibiotics do. Antibiotics will block the biochemical pathways in bacteria and thereby killing them. But these antibiotics are not at all effective to kill a virus. For that, we have antiviral drugs. But making antiviral drugs are harder than making antibiotics, as viruses have very few biochemical reactions of their own. They invade into our cells and use our cell for its life processes and make more copies of its own. Despite of limitations, we now have some effective antiviral drugs. For example, we have antiviral drug against HIV, which causes AIDS. We just learned about the treatment of diseases, but there are some limitations for these treatments. If a person has suffered from a deadly infectious disease, it may damage the body functions permanently. There are chances the person may not recover from the malfunctions completely. The treatment may take time to cure disease. Hence, the person may be bedridden for some time even if we give proper treatment or medication. The person suffering from an infection becomes the source of that infection. That means he may spread the disease to healthy ones. These are the difficulties faced during diseases. We all have heard the proverb, prevention is better than cure. If we take proper precautions, we can avoid the difficulties during the disease and treatments. Let's learn how we can prevent diseases. Earlier, we learned that many infectious diseases are transmitted through air, water, and through direct contact. In the case of airborne diseases, avoiding crowd and providing living conditions that are not overcrowded will help us to stay away from diseases. We can avoid the waterborne diseases by providing clean and safe drinking water. This can be achieved by treating the water to kill infectious organisms. Boiling water before drinking will also help us to prevent the waterborne diseases. We already learned that there are some vectors like the insects and animals that carry the infectious organism and spread the disease. Clean surroundings and clean homely atmosphere will help us to stay away from vector-borne diseases. For example, mosquitoes are vectors for a couple of diseases. We should not allow water to get collected in any of our surroundings, which will give a chance for the mosquitoes to breed. As a whole, we can say that public hygiene is a basic principle to prevent many infectious diseases. There are some general principles to prevent infectious diseases. We need a healthy immune system. We know that common cold is an airborne disease. You might have noticed that if any one of the students in your class is suffering from common cold, he might cough or sneeze in the class. All of the students will be exposed to the infection, but only some students will get the disease. This is because the immune system is very active and healthy in others. We are exposed to infectious organisms almost every day, but we are not sick all the time. This is because our immune system recruits many cells to fight with the invading organisms. If our immune system wins the fight, we will not be sick. If the number of microbes is less, then our immune system can successfully kill all of them and the manifestation of disease is minor. It means that when we get exposed to an infectious organism, it is not necessary that we develop a disease, thanks to our immune system. But for the proper functioning of the immune system, we need nourishment. Availability of proper and sufficient food to everyone will prevent the infectious diseases. Have you heard about smallpox? It is an infectious disease spread by a virus. It was used to be contagious and often deadly. But now the smallpox is successfully eradicated from India. People used to be afraid to come in contact with someone suffering from smallpox since they were afraid of catching the disease. But the group of people who suffered from smallpox earlier and successfully survived it provide nursing care for the victims of smallpox. This was possible because the people who had suffered smallpox earlier had no chance of getting the disease again. Let's learn how is this possible. Whenever an infectious microbe enters our body, our immune system gets activated and try to kill the invading microbe by producing antibodies against them and recruit many cells to fight with them. Here you can see this is a virus, this is the cell of a virus and these are the antibodies in our body. A group of antibodies are fighting with a single viral cell. But if the number of microbes are more, then our immune system may fail to kill them. At that time, we will get the disease. But once produced, these antibodies will be there in our body. If some infectious microbe enters our body in future, The already present antibodies can recognize them and can attack them in a faster and effective rate. This time we are safe from infections. This same principle is used in vaccines. All of us took vaccines in our childhood days. Vaccines contain weak or dead viruses. They are very small in number and cannot develop a disease in us. But these small numbers are enough to produce antibodies in our body against that particular virus. And these antibodies will remain in our body. If the same virus as in the vaccine invades our body in the future, these antibodies will attack them in a faster rate and we will be saved from that particular disease. Many such vaccines are available for preventing a whole range of infectious diseases. It provides a disease-specific means of prevention. There is vaccine against chickenpox, polio, tetanus, whooping cough, etc. That's it about the chapter Why Do We Fall Ill? If you like this video, please share it with your friends. If you have any queries, put it in the comment box. Thank you.